Harper Lane had never felt smaller than she did walking into the 27th floor of Whitmore and Blake, the Park Avenue law firm, with glass walls so clean they reflected her back at her in painful detail, her cheap thrift store coat, her worn-out shoes, the frayed strap of the purse she'd repaired with a safety pin. She stood in a lobby where people wore tailored coats and Rolex watches that probably cost more than everything she owned, combined. No one looked at her. If they did, it was the way someone glances at a stain on a tablecloth. Brief, dismissive, irritated that it exists. She swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her purse the way a drowning person grabs a lifeline. She told herself she only needed to get through the reading of Evan Rowe's will. 5 minutes, 10 at most. Then she could walk back out into the cold Manhattan air, catch the bus home, and pretend this world had never touched her at all. At the reception desk, a woman with a sleek bun and perfect eyeliner blinked at her as if Harper had spoken in another language. "Name?" "Harper Lane," she said. "I'm here for the Rowe will reading." The receptionist's smile tightened, brittle as glass. "Family members are in the West Conference Room. I'm supposed to be there." The receptionist paused long enough to make sure Harper felt the full weight of her doubt before finally checking the list. Her eyebrows twitched upward for just a second. "Take a seat. They'll call you." But no one did. After 12 minutes of sitting uncomfortably in a velvet chair she clearly didn't belong in, Harper heard sharp heels clicking down the hall. Vivian Rowe, Evan's mother, Manhattan royalty in a charcoal coat and pearls, strode past, followed by her younger son Damien in a suit that gleamed under the lights. Vivian didn't even slow down when her gaze brushed over Harper like a cold blade. But Damien noticed. His smirk curled. "Well," he said softly, "looks like someone wandered into the wrong building." Heat crawled up Harper's neck, but she stayed silent. She had survived worse than his cruelty. Minutes later, a paralegal finally led her toward the conference room, pushing open a tall glass door. The chatter inside died instantly. Every head turned toward her, powerful people in immaculate clothing, their eyes narrowing in confusion, irritation, disbelief. Harper felt her breath choke in her chest. She shouldn't have come. She should have stayed home. She should have... Connor Whitmore, Evan's lawyer, cleared his throat. "Now that everyone is here," he said, looking directly at Harper in a way that made her heartbeat stutter. "We can begin. Mr. Evan Rowe left instructions that the reading would not proceed without Ms. Harper Lane present." The room froze. Vivian's diamond bracelet clinked against the table as her hand tightened. Damien's jaw flexed. Someone whispered, "Why would he mention her?" And then Connor opened the leather folder. "Let's start," he said. "The first line of the will concerns Ms. Lane and her daughter." Every molecule of air seemed to vanish at once. Harper Lane woke every morning long before the sun, long before Manhattan's skyline began to glow gold behind the cracked blinds of her tiny Queens apartment. The air inside always felt a little cold, a little thin, as if the walls themselves were tired of standing. She would shuffle to the kitchen, careful not to wake her daughter in the next room, and start the coffee maker she bought from a garage sale for $8. It rattled loudly, like it was complaining about being alive, much like Harper felt on most days. Her life had been a long string of small battles, overdue rent notices tucked under the door, medical bills from Lily's asthma episodes, late-night bus rides after double shifts, the quiet humiliation of pretending she didn't hear co-workers whisper about her bad luck with men. They didn't know the truth. Few people did. She had once been a girl with dreams, the kind who believed life would reward kindness, who thought love, real love, could survive pressure from wealthy parents and long-distance plans. But when she got pregnant with Evan Rowe's child, her world shrank overnight. His mother's threats were sharp, icy things. Walk away now, Miss Lane, or we will bury you in ways you don't even have the vocabulary to describe. Harper was 22, terrified, and alone. Evan was abruptly sent overseas, and the last message he managed to get to her was a broken apology that arrived too late to save anything. Still, she kept the baby, and that one choice defined every year that followed. Her daughter, Lily, became her reason to breathe. A laughing 6-year-old who loved drawing unicorns on scrap paper, who carried an inhaler in her tiny backpack, who always asked why the other kids had dads at science fairs. Harper would kiss her forehead, smile, and say, "Because every family is different, sweetheart." Then she would hide in the bathroom and silently cry into a hand towel. Most days she felt invisible. Just another tired service worker with dark circles under her eyes, ringing up groceries, handing out coffee, scraping together enough to keep the lights on. She avoided mirrors. They only showed someone life had pushed too hard, too fast. And yet, there was strength in her, the quiet, sturdy kind you only earn by surviving storms no one else sees. She never asked for help. She never expected justice. She certainly never expected to be invited to a will reading on Park Avenue. The envelope that arrived 2 weeks ago felt like a prank at first. Thick, official, out of place on her worn doormat. When she read Evan's name, her knees nearly buckled. She sat on the floor for a long time, staring at it, unsure whether she should open it or burn it. But she went. Because Lily deserved answers. Because Harper refused to let fear decide her life again. And as she stepped into that conference room full of hostile faces, she had no idea that everything she'd ever lost was about to come back in a way no one in that room could predict. The elevator ride to the 27th floor felt like rising into a world where oxygen cost more than her monthly rent. Harper stood near the back, squeezed between marble walls and people who smelled faintly of expensive cologne. A man in a tailored navy suit glanced at her thrift store coat and instinctively stepped aside, as if poverty were contagious. She kept her eyes down, silently praying the elevator wouldn't stop long enough for anyone to ask why she was there. When the doors opened, the hallway stretched before her, quiet, polished, impossibly elegant. The cream-colored carpet felt like walking on clouds she had no right to touch. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Manhattan in its morning glory, the skyline glowing in pale gold, the Chrysler Building gleaming like a blade, yellow taxis drifting below like busy ants. It was a view of a world she'd only ever seen through smudged bus windows. Connor Whitmore's law firm didn't just take up space, it dominated it. Glass walls reflected art pieces she couldn't name. A sculpture near the reception desk looked like it cost more than the total she'd ever earned in her life. Every detail screamed old money, power, untouchable legacy. Harper's pulse thudded painfully. She didn't belong here. Not in a place where people wrote emails on MacBook Pros while sipping lattes delivered by private assistants, where names like Roe carried weight heavier than gold bars. She imagined Lily drawing unicorns at the rickety kitchen table back home, and her heart twisted. Evan had walked these halls. His mother practically ruled them. Vivian Roe's presence haunted the space long before she appeared. Her portrait hung in the corridor outside the West Conference Room, a sleek black-and-white photograph of her in a structured blazer, chin raised, eyes sharp as a hawk, the kind of woman who didn't ask for respect. She extracted it from everyone around her, and somewhere behind those glass doors, the rest of the Roe family waited. Wealthy investors, polished board members, people who wore confidence like a second skin. People who had built their world on marble and money, and who had no intention of sharing any of it with a single mom from Queens. Harper felt small in a way she hadn't since giving birth alone in a hospital room with peeling paint. But she lifted her chin. She hadn't come for herself. She'd come because Lily deserved answers, even if those answers lived in a world determined to shut the door in their faces. A paralegal appeared, her heels clicking softly. "Ms. Lane, they're ready for you." Harper swallowed hard, one breath, one step. The glass door opened, revealing a long conference table, sunlight pouring across polished wood, and the Rowe family turning toward her in synchronized disbelief. It felt like stepping into a lion's den, and all she could think was, whatever happens in this room will decide everything. Vivian Rowe did not need to raise her voice to command a room. Power clung to her the way perfume clings to silk, quiet, expensive, impossible to ignore. As Harper stepped fully into the conference room, Vivian lifted her eyes from a stack of legal folders and gave her a single, piercing look. It was the kind of look that stripped a person bare, the kind that told you exactly where you stood in the hierarchy of her world, beneath her heel. She wore a charcoal gray suit that fit her like it had been tailored by someone flown in from Milan. Her diamond bracelet caught the morning sun, scattering sharp little fragments of light across the table. Nothing about her softened. Not her posture, not her expression, not her history. She was a woman who had spent decades bending markets, boardrooms, and even her own sons to her will. And she did not appreciate seeing Harper Lane, that girl, sitting at the same table. "Connor," she said, voice cool as an ice bath, "would you care to explain why this individual is here?" Harper felt the sting of humiliation, but Connor Whitmore didn't flinch. "Evan's instructions were explicit," he said. "The will cannot be read without Ms. Lane present." Vivian's eyes hardened, and the temperature of the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Before Harper could look away, another voice sliced in, smooth, amused, poisonous. Damian Rowe leaned back in his chair, ankle resting casually over one knee, smirking like he owned the air everyone breathed. He was the opposite of his mother's cold elegance. Flashy, overly confident, the kind of man who smelled of expensive whiskey and reckless decisions. His gold watch gleamed aggressively as he tapped the table. "Well," he drawled, "I suppose every circus needs an audience?" A few board members chuckled under their breath. Harper's cheeks burned, but she didn't respond. She'd learned long ago that silence sometimes protected you better than words. Damien continued, eyes narrowed with a lazy cruelty. "You must be the barista, right? The one Evan, what did you call it, Mother, had a phase with?" Vivian didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Approval, silent, but undeniable. Harper forced herself to breathe slowly, in through her nose, out through her mouth. She reminded herself why she was here. Lily, the only thing that mattered. Connor slid a leather folder to the center of the table. "Shall we begin?" he said. Vivian rested her manicured fingers on the table, expression sharp enough to draw blood. "By all means," she said. "Let's dispose of whatever fantasy Evan left behind." Harper swallowed hard. In that moment, she understood something with painful clarity. Vivian didn't just dislike her. Vivian wanted her erased, not just from the inheritance, not just from the room, but from Evan's story and from her daughter's future. And Harper realized this wasn't a will reading. It was the opening shot of a war she never asked for. Connor Whitmore had barely finished reading the first line of the will when the tension in the room snapped like a wire stretched too tight. "To Ms. Harper Lane," he read, "for reasons known to myself and detailed in the accompanying addendum." Vivian's palm slammed onto the table. "Stop!" Her voice cracked like thunder, a sound that made seasoned board members flinch. "This is absurd. My son would never leave anything of consequence to this woman." Connor's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Rowe, if you interrupt again, I'll have to—" "I will interrupt as much as I please," she hissed. "This is my son's estate, and this person," she gestured sharply toward Harper, "has no rightful place here." Murmurs erupted. A few people whispered openly now, not caring that Harper could hear. "Is she serious? Why did Evan even know her? She looks like she cleans offices, not inherits from them." Damien leaned forward, lacing his fingers. Connor, be reasonable. This woman is fishing for attention. I'm sure there's a legal way to dismiss her. Harper felt her throat closing. The room spun slightly, the polished table blurring at the edges. She hadn't expected kindness. But she wasn't prepared for the brutality, the open mockery, the cold precision of people who had destroyed reputations before breakfast and felt nothing about it. Connor cleared his throat again, firmer this time. Evan's will is legally binding. Every person listed must be acknowledged. Vivian's eyes snapped toward Harper like a hawk, locking onto prey. Tell me, she said coldly, how much did you hope to get? 10,000? A little apartment somewhere? Child support for a child who may not even be Evan's? The last sentence punched the air from Harper's lungs. She had endured insults before. Poverty, fear, loneliness. But no one, not even strangers, had ever questioned Lily's right to exist. That's enough, Harper whispered, but her voice was too soft, swallowed by the luxury of the room. Damien chuckled. She speaks. Someone else laughed. Her humiliation was complete. Her cheeks burned. Her eyes stung. She instinctively reached for the chair, needing something solid to hold on to. She thought of Lily, her tiny asthma inhaler, the nights Harper held her through coughing fits, the birthday cakes Harper scraped money together to bake, the little girl who always asked, "Will anyone ever come to my school play?" And now here she was, being treated like a stain in the middle of the Rowe dynasty's immaculate table. But before she could retreat into herself, Connor raised his voice, sharp, commanding. For the record, he said, staring directly at Vivian and Damien, Evan personally requested Ms. Lane be present. He also specified her name first, and the next line explains why. The room quieted instantly. Even Vivian stopped breathing. Connor looked down at the will again, and with deliberate calm, he read the sentence that would detonate the room. To Ms. Harper Lane, the mother of my daughter. Gasps erupted. A glass hit the table. Someone swore under their breath. Harper froze. Her humiliation vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous. Truth. The room erupted the moment Connor read the words, the mother of my daughter. Gasps cracked like glass hitting marble. Chairs scraped. Someone muttered, "This can't be real," while another whispered, "Vivian is going to lose it." And she did. Vivian shot up from her chair so fast it toppled backward. "Lies!" she snapped, voice trembling with a rage she rarely revealed. "My son would never have a child with—" She sliced her hand toward Harper, unable to finish the sentence without choking on it. "This is fabricated. Manipulated. She trapped him." Connor calmly set the will on the table. Evan's paternity statement is signed and notarized. It is legally verified. But the damage was already done. Every head turned toward Harper, not with sympathy, not even curiosity, but disgust wrapped in speculation. She could feel their judgment crawling across her skin like insects. Damien leaned forward, eyes sharp. Convenient, isn't it? The poor girl from Queens shows up with a kid and suddenly my brother leaves her. What? Money? Shares? He smirked. Tell me, Harper, how much does a fabricated DNA test go for these days? Heat surged to Harper's face. Lily is Evan's daughter. I never— Oh, please, Damien cut in. Women like you always say that. The words hit harder than he intended, harder than anyone saw. Women like you, poor, unimportant, disposable. Harper felt something crumble inside her chest, a piece of strength she'd been holding together with nothing but thin hope and a mother's instinct. Her vision blurred. Her breathing turned shallow. She hated herself for it, but humiliation wrapped around her like a chokehold. Connor tried to intervene. Let's proceed. There's more. But Harper's ears were ringing. The room spun. The table felt miles away. Vivian's voice sliced through the air again. This is nothing but a ploy. Evan was vulnerable, sick, emotional. She manipulated a dying man. Harper flinched. No one else did. Damien shrugged. If the will gives her anything substantial, we'll contest it. She's not stable enough to care for a child, let alone handle shares in Row Capital. Not stable enough to care for a child. That sentence stabbed deeper than the others. Lily. They were talking about Lily, about taking Lily. Her breaths grew sharper, her chest burned. She reached for the edge of the table, but her fingers slipped. A roaring sound filled her ears, drowning everything else. For a moment she heard Evan's voice, not really just the memory of it, saying he was sorry that one day things would be different. But they weren't. Not here. Not now. Connor's voice cut through the haze. "Harper, are you all right?" She wasn't. She absolutely wasn't. She stood abruptly, chair scraping so loudly it silenced the room. "I need air," she whispered. Then she turned and walked out, shoulders shaking, vision swimming, her heart breaking in a way no one in that room cared to see. Behind her, Vivian's cold words followed like a curse. "She won't last." Women like her never do. And for the first time since Lily was born, Harper believed it. Harper didn't remember pressing the elevator button, didn't remember stepping inside, didn't remember the polished doors closing on the stunned faces of the Rowe family. All she knew was the suffocating pressure in her chest, the raw sting of humiliation, the terror curling cold and dark inside her ribs. The elevator descended in heavy silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. When the doors slid open to the lobby, Harper stumbled out into the marble floor and leaned against a pillar like someone fighting for air. She wiped her cheeks, furious at herself for crying. Furious that she cared what those people thought, furious that they could still hurt her after all these years. "Harper." The voice was calm, low, steady. She turned to see Connor Whitmore standing a few feet away, leather folder in hand, concern etched into the lines of his face. I'm fine," Harper whispered, even though she wasn't. "No," Connor said gently. "You're not." He approached slowly, giving her space to breathe. "You shouldn't have had to hear those things," he said. "Not today." Harper shook her head. "I shouldn't have come. I don't belong here. They want to take Lily. Stop." Connor's tone sharpened, not unkind, but decisive. "They want you rattled. They want you to walk away because Evan left you something they weren't prepared for." Her breath caught. "Left me... what?" Connor glanced around the lobby, jaw tightening. Then he lowered his voice. "There's something you didn't hear in that room, something Evan asked me to share with you privately." Harper blinked. "What are you talking about?" He opened the leather folder, slowly, deliberately, as if revealing something fragile. Inside was a single sealed envelope with her name written in Evan's handwriting. The ink looked old, worn at the edges, as if he'd held it many times before deciding to entrust it to someone else. Harper's knees nearly buckled. "He wrote this," Connor said softly, 8 months before he died, and he instructed me not to release it until you were present at his will reading." Her breath hitched. "Why? What's in it?" Connor exhaled. "A confession. And proof." She stared at the envelope like it was a ghost. "Evan didn't abandon you," Connor continued. "He tried to come back. Several times. His mother intercepted him, blocked his calls, threatened to disinherit him. Threatened legal action, whatever it took to keep him away from you." Harper's chest tightened painfully. "No. She told him I wanted money, that I wanted to ruin his life." Connor shook his head. "Evan never believed that. But Vivian had leverage over him. Over his career, his health, his reputation. He kept records of everything, and those records..." He tapped the folder. "Prove exactly what she did." Harper stared, numb. Vivian had stolen years from her, from Evan, from Lily. "Why didn't he come anyway?" Harper whispered. Connor's eyes softened. "He tried. There's more in the envelope, but Harper—" He paused. "This is only the beginning. Vivian is hiding far more than you think." Harper felt something shift inside her. Something fierce. Something rising from the ashes of the humiliation she'd endured upstairs. For the first time since she walked into the will reading, she felt not just broken, but armed. The envelope felt heavier than anything Harper had ever held. It was just paper, thin, fragile, ordinary, but her hands shook like she was holding a piece of dynamite. Maybe she was. Maybe this single letter was the thing that could finally blow apart the lies Vivian Rowe had wrapped around her life like barbed wire. "Open it," Connor said quietly, stepping back to give her space. Harper slid a finger under the seal. The paper tore with a soft whisper, and the moment she saw Evan's handwriting, her breath caught. It was him. It was really him. Not the ghost she'd carried in her memories, not the apology she imagined late at night, when the loneliness grew too thick to swallow. This was Evan speaking to her across time. She unfolded the letter. "Harper, if you're reading this, then I failed to do what I promised you years ago. To return, to fight for you, for our daughter. I tried. God, I tried. But my family, you know what they're capable of." Her vision blurred as she continued. "They threatened you. They threatened my career. They even threatened to pursue custody of our baby if I didn't stay away. They said you were unstable. They said you were after money. I knew none of it was true. But I was drowning, Harper. And I didn't know how to fight them without destroying you in the process. But I never stopped loving you. I never stopped watching over our daughter from a distance, and everything I own, everything I ever built, I want her to have. I want you to have the life they stole from both of us." A tear fell onto the page. Harper hadn't cried from love in years. It felt foreign, almost forbidden. At the bottom of the letter was a small USB drive taped to the fold. "What's this?" she whispered. Connor stepped forward. Proof. Evan recorded statements, collected emails, screenshots, audio files. Everything that shows how Vivian interfered, manipulated, threatened him. It's enough to bury her legal challenge before it even starts. Harper stared at the tiny flash drive as if it were a torch handed to her in the dark. "But there's more," Connor added. Evan also documented his acknowledgement of Lily, DNA reports, signed statements, a video he recorded just months before his death. Harper felt her heart twist. "A video?" Connor nodded. "You'll see it soon, but understand this. Everything changes from this moment forward. You are not the powerless woman they think you are." Harper took a shaky breath. Somewhere deep inside, beneath years of exhaustion and defeat, something flickered, something she thought had died long ago. Courage, resolve, a willingness to fight. She straightened her shoulders. "Connor," she said, voice soft but steady, "I'm done letting them decide who I am." He allowed the faintest smile. "Then you're ready for what comes next." "What is that?" His eyes hardened, not unkindly but with purpose. "War." And for the first time in her life, Harper didn't feel like running from it. She felt ready to walk straight into the fire. Harper barely slept that night. Evan's letter sat on the kitchen table beside Lily's inhaler, illuminated by the flickering light above the stove. Every time Harper closed her eyes, she saw the conference room, the way Vivian's gaze sliced her open, the way Damien smirked like he already knew how the story ended. But by morning, something far worse waited for her. Her phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, texts, emails, social media alerts from accounts she'd never even followed. She frowned, unlocking the cracked screen. The first headline hit her like a punch. Queen's barista claims billionaire heir's child. DNA questioned. The second was worse. Sources say Harper Lane tried to blackmail Evan Rowe before his death. Her heart stopped. No. 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 She scrolled, hands trembling. A grainy photo showed her outside the diner where she worked. Taken from across the street, her face half-turned, her apron stained from a long shift. The caption read, "Rowe family victimized by single mother with troubled history." Harper felt the ground tilt beneath her. Troubled history? Blackmail? Victimizer? This was Vivian's work, surgical, timed, merciless. As she stood frozen in the tiny kitchen, Lily padded out of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy? Why are you crying?" Harper swallowed her terror. "I'm not, baby. I'm just tired." But the day didn't give her a chance to recover. At the diner, her manager pulled her aside before she even tied her apron. "Harper, look, we're getting calls, reporters, people asking about you. This place isn't built for attention like that. Maybe take the week off. Unpaid, of course." Unpaid. The word echoed through her like a death sentence. On the bus ride home, strangers stared at her phone screen as another headline popped up. Anonymous source. Lane's financial struggles motive for claiming heir's child. Anonymous source. Harper didn't need to guess who. Panic seeped into her bones. If Vivian was releasing stories this fast, the next move was obvious. Question Harper's stability, question her mental health, question her parenting. And if they questioned her parenting, they could come for Lily. Her phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail from a number she didn't recognize. She pressed play. "Ms. Lane, this is Children and Family Services. We've received an inquiry regarding potential instability in your living conditions. We need to schedule a home visit." Harper felt her lungs collapse. A home visit? Already? This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was a full-scale attack. She sank onto the bus seat, gripping the metal bar to keep the world from spinning. People glanced at her, then quickly away, pretending not to notice a woman breaking quietly in front of them. Her mind raced. Rent overdue, job disappearing, headlines painting her as a predator. Vivian wasn't just trying to destroy her reputation. She was building a case to take Lily. As the bus rumbled toward Queens, Harper pressed the USB drive in her pocket, the proof Evan had left behind. It was her only weapon, her only chance. And she knew one thing with shattering clarity. If she didn't fight back now, she would lose everything. By the time Harper reached her apartment, the sun had dipped behind the buildings, turning the streets of Queens into long corridors of shadow. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Her phone buzzed non-stop in her pocket, but she didn't look. She knew what it was. More articles, more lies, more poison designed to rot her life from the inside out. Inside the apartment, the air felt tight, thin. Lily was coloring on the floor, legs crossed, crayons scattered everywhere. She looked up with a smile, the kind that could break and heal Harper in the same breath. "Mommy, look! I drew us at the park." Harper forced a smile. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." But even as she tried to sound steady, her vision blurred. She turned away before Lily could see her crumble. The voicemail from Children and Family Services echoed in her mind like a warning bell she couldn't shut off. A home visit meant evaluation. Evaluation meant judgment. Judgment meant risk. And risk meant losing Lily. Her chest tightened. Her breaths came short. She set her purse down and stumbled into the bathroom, locking the door. Her hands trembled violently as she gripped the sink. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "Please, God." "Not Lily, anything but Lily." Her reflection stared back, pale, exhausted, frightened beyond measure. For the first time, she saw what Vivienne wanted the world to see. A struggling single mom, stretched thin, battling too many burdens at once. Someone easy to discredit, someone easy to crush. The panic attack rose fast, sharp, suffocating. Her heart pounded like it was trying to escape her chest. She pressed her palms against the cold counter, gasping for air. Someone knocked gently. "Mommy, are you okay?" The sound of Lily's voice nearly broke her. "I'm fine," Harper managed. Just give me a minute." But she wasn't fine. She was unraveling. Her job, gone. Her name, dragged through the dirt. Her daughter, at risk. And all because Vivian Rowe decided she wasn't worthy of breathing the same air as the Rowe family. Harper slid to the floor, clutching her knees to her chest. Silent sobs shook her shoulders until her whole body ached. She didn't cry like someone sad. She cried like someone drowning, with no land in sight. After several minutes, the apartment went quiet. She wiped her face, trembling still, and forced herself to step out. Lily sat at the table coloring another picture, this one of a woman with a cape. "That's you," Lily said proudly. "You're a superhero." The words shattered Harper. She knelt beside her daughter and wrapped her arms around her tightly, too tightly, trying to hold together the pieces of her sanity. "Mommy?" Lily asked softly. "Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong?" Harper's breath caught. "No," she whispered. "You did everything right. Everything." But as she held her daughter, a dark truth settled over her. Heavier than anything she'd ever carried. She wasn't just fighting for justice anymore, she was fighting for survival. And right now, she was losing. The next morning arrived gray and heavy, the kind of New York morning where the sky looked bruised. Harper barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw headlines twisting her name, strangers on the internet dissecting her life, and government officials knocking on her door to question her ability to care for Lily. She was pouring cereal into a chipped bowl when someone knocked. Her blood turned cold. It's too soon. They wouldn't come this fast. Please, God, not today. She opened the door cautiously. But it wasn't Children and Family Services. It was Connor Whitmore. He stood in the hallway holding a leather briefcase, looking out of place against the peeling paint and flickering light. "Harper," he said gently, "may I come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. Lily peeked from her bedroom, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Connor offered her a warm smile, the kind that didn't ask for anything in return. Once inside, Harper closed the door and leaned against it. "Did you see the news?" she whispered. Connor exhaled. "I did. I also know who's behind it. Vivian. And Damien," he added. "He contacted a tabloid reporter he's used before. They're building a narrative to undermine you before the court even steps in." Harper sank onto a chair. "They're trying to take Lily." "They're trying to scare you into running," Connor corrected. "If you disappear, they win everything." She looked up, her eyes red. "Connor, I can't fight people like them. They have money. Lawyers, connections, I have—" She looked around her tiny apartment, the broken lamp, the duct-taped chair. "Nothing. You have truth," he said simply. "And you have something they never expected. Me." She frowned. "Why? Why are you helping me? You could lose your job. They could ruin you too." Connor paused, choosing his words carefully. "Before Evan died, he asked me to protect you and Lily. He trusted me with documents that could expose his family's misconduct. And I believe in honoring the wishes of my clients, even after death." Harper blinked back tears. "I don't know how to fight, Connor. That's why I'm here. You won't fight alone." He placed his briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside were neatly arranged documents, printed emails, screenshots, and a small folder marked Confidential. "These are the first pieces of evidence Evan collected," Connor explained. Proof Vivian interfered with his communication, threatened legal action, manipulated business deals to force him overseas, and even intercepted a letter he wrote to you in 2018. Harper's breath caught. She stole his letter? Connor nodded. She never wanted you to know he tried to come back. Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, emotions trembling through her like aftershocks. And there's more, Connor said. A lot more. Before she could respond, another knock sounded at the door, firmer this time. Harper tensed. Connor, is that them? But when the door opened, it wasn't the government. It was a tall man in a tailored coat, sharp-eyed, purposeful, Julian Hayes, CEO, power broker, one of Evan's closest partners. Ms. Lane, Julian said, his voice crisp but unexpectedly respectful. We need to talk. Evan told me things before he died, things I think you deserve to know. Harper froze. An ally wasn't all she gained today. She had just gained a second one. Julian Hayes didn't step into Harper's apartment like a CEO. He stepped in like a man carrying the weight of something he'd avoided for far too long. His tailored coat contrasted painfully against the chipped paint on her walls, but he didn't seem to care. He nodded politely to Lily and greeted her with a gentleness that surprised Harper. Then he turned serious. Evan told me, Julian began, that if anything happened to him, I should make sure the right people knew the truth. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. He paused. Now I do. Harper sat at the small kitchen table, hands clasped tightly. What truth? Julian exchanged a brief glance with Connor before sitting across from her. That Vivian pushed him into signing away decisions he never wanted to give her. That Damien was siphoning funds from the family trust. And that Evan intended to make your daughter his legal heir, no matter the consequences. Harper felt her breath shake. He tried. He really tried. Julian nodded, and Vivian made sure he failed at every turn. Connor began sorting the documents on the table. Harper, this isn't just about inheritance anymore. This is about criminal activity, fraud, coercion, and a pattern of abuse that Evan documented meticulously. If we organize this, if we present it properly, you won't just protect Lily, you'll dismantle their position. But Harper stared at the papers as if they were written in another language. I don't know how to do any of this. I make minimum wage. I don't even understand half the words you're saying. That's why we're here, Julian said. And if you're willing, I'll teach you everything you need to know. How to read statements. How to recognize fund transfers. How to understand corporate structures. You won't fight blind. Harper blinked. Julian Hayes, the Julian Hayes, was offering to teach her how to fight back against a billion-dollar empire. Connor reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sleek MacBook Air. This is Evan's. He wanted you to have it. Harper touched the keyboard gently, almost reverently. It felt out of place in her small kitchen, like a symbol of a life stolen from her. Julian leaned forward. We start tonight. And they did. For hours after Lily fell asleep on the couch with her stuffed rabbit, Harper sat with Julian and Connor under the dim kitchen light. Julian broke down financial terms in simple language. Connor explained legal documents carefully, never talking down to her. They printed charts, highlighted signatures, mapped out timelines of fraud. At first, Harper felt overwhelmed, small, inadequate. But slowly something shifted. Her questions grew sharper. Her hands steadied. Her eyes focused. She began to understand the patterns of deception, the manipulations, the lies that Vivian and Damien had woven. Julian watched her quietly, impressed. You learn fast, he said. Evan was right about you. Harper didn't know whether to smile or cry. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving, she was preparing. And Vivian Rowe had no idea the woman she tried to destroy was becoming the enemy she should have feared from the beginning. The knock came 2 days later. 3 sharp raps that seemed to hit Harper directly in the spine. She froze in the middle of the living room. Lily was on the couch drawing stars on construction paper, humming to herself. Connor looked up from the files he'd been organizing, his expression tightening. "That's not Julian," he said quietly. No, it wasn't. Harper already knew. When she opened the door, 2 officials stood in the hallway, crisp suits, clipped badges, professional smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Ms. Harper Lane?" Her breath wavered. "Yes. We're from Child and Family Services. We received a formal complaint regarding the stability of your household. We need to conduct a welfare check for your daughter." The floor dropped away beneath her. Lily looked up, confused. "Mommy, who are they?" "It's okay, baby," Harper whispered, though nothing felt okay. The taller official stepped inside, scanning the apartment with meticulous eyes, peeling paint, secondhand furniture, the space heater in the corner. The apartment wasn't unsafe. It wasn't unclean. But it wasn't wealthy. It wasn't the picture-perfect stability Vivian curated like a brand. And that was enough. Connor moved to Harper's side. "You cannot speak to them alone. I'm her legal counsel." The officials exchanged a quick look but didn't object. They began with questions. Cold, clinical questions that sliced deeper than any insult Vivian had thrown at her during the will reading. "How many hours do you work per week? How much savings do you have? When was Lily's last medical checkup? Does she have her own bed? Have you ever experienced emotional instability or panic episodes while caring for her?" Harper's hands shook. How did they know about her panic attack? Who told them? And then she understood. Vivian. Who else had access to that kind of power? The shorter official glanced at Lily's inhaler on the table. "How often does she need this? Does she ever go without medication due to financial hardship?" Harper swallowed hard. "Never. I always find a way." "But you have no health insurance, correct?" I'm working on it." The official wrote something on her clipboard. Harper's heart cracked. Connor stepped in sharply. "This line of questioning is inappropriate without reviewing Ms. Lane's documentation. We request a postponement of judgment until we submit medical records and financial proof." But the officials didn't stop. Finally, they asked the question Harper feared most. "Has anyone else, family or otherwise, expressed concern about your ability to provide a stable home?" Harper's breath stalled. They already knew the answer. She didn't have to say it. The taller official closed the folder. "We will review everything and contact you with our findings." As they walked out, Lily tugged Harper's sleeve. "Mommy, are they taking me away?" Harper sank to her knees and hugged her daughter tightly, her voice breaking. "No, no one is taking you anywhere." But when the door shut, she whispered the truth only Connor heard. "They're going to try. They're really going to try." Connor placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "They just declared war," he said quietly. "Now we fight back harder." And for the first time, Harper wasn't the only one trembling. Her enemy was escalating. But so was she. Vivian Rowe did not make mistakes, at least not publicly. But behind the marble walls of the Rowe townhouse on Fifth Avenue, her empire was beginning to fracture in ways even she couldn't fully control. The evening after the welfare check at Harper's apartment, Vivian stood in her private study, staring out at Manhattan's shimmering skyline. Her reflection glared back at her in the glass. Flawless hair, immaculate suit, posture sharp enough to cut steel. Everything about her radiated control, but her hands trembled. Damien paced behind her like a caged wolf. "This is getting out of hand, Mother. Connor is helping her. And Julian Hayes? I thought he was on our side." Vivian turned, voice low and venomous. "Julian is a businessman. He doesn't take sides. He calculates them. If he senses instability, he'll move toward the stronger position." Damien scoffed. And you think she's the stronger position? Vivian's eyes narrowed. Not yet, but Connor is clever, and Evan left more behind than I anticipated. She moved to her desk and opened a drawer filled with files, sealed reports, hidden transfers, confidential assessments. Her fingers grazed a folder marked DH Accounts. Damien stiffened. Mother! She lifted the folder. Explain this. Damien's throat bobbed. It's nothing. Just some side investments. Side investments? She snapped. Or the $12 million you funneled into offshore accounts without board approval? Damien's face paled. You weren't supposed to know about that. No, she said coolly. I wasn't. But Evan knew. He documented everything, and now Connor has those documents. Damien's breathing quickened. We can fix this. We always do. Vivian walked toward him slowly. This time, your recklessness has given her ammunition. Harper Lane doesn't even realize the power she holds with those files. Damien clenched his fists. Then destroy them. Vivian's silence said what she couldn't admit. She'd already tried, and failed. Across the city, Harper sat at her tiny kitchen table with Connor and Julian, reviewing bank statements and unreadable spreadsheets. But something remarkable was happening. She was beginning to understand them. They moved money here, she said, pointing at a line item she had highlighted. But then covered it with this fake transfer. Julian's eyebrows lifted. She's right. Connor smirked slightly. Told you she learns fast. Harper didn't smile. She wasn't learning to impress them. She was learning to survive, to fight, to win. Julian leaned forward. If this becomes public, Damien could face federal charges, and Vivian, she'll lose all credibility with the board. Harper swallowed. Then that means they're vulnerable? For the first time, Connor said, yes. The realization struck Harper like a jolt of electricity. Vivian wasn't invincible. Damien wasn't untouchable. They were cracking, and the truth Evan left behind was the wedge that would split their empire apart. Miles away, in her Fifth Avenue townhouse, Vivian pressed her trembling hands flat against her desk. We hit her harder, she whispered. Before she hits us. But even she knew. The war she started was no longer one-sided. For the first time, the Rows were afraid. The boardroom at Row Capital looked nothing like the cramped kitchen where Harper had spent the past week studying financial documents. Here, the table was a gleaming slab of polished walnut long enough to seat giants. The windows framed Manhattan like a portrait, skyline glowing, traffic pulsing below like veins of light. It was a room designed to intimidate, and it worked. When Harper stepped inside, 20 pairs of eyes lifted, cold, calculating, dismissive. Vivian Rowe sat at the head of the table, posture flawless, lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Damien lounged beside her, tapping a Mont Blanc pen against the table with arrogant rhythm. Harper felt her throat tighten. But Julian stood just half a step behind her, his reassuring presence like a silent anchor. Connor slid into the chair beside her, opening his folder calmly, as if meetings like this didn't decide the fate of families. Vivian leaned forward slightly. Miss Lane, she said, her tone smooth as silk. How brave of you to join us. I wasn't sure you could handle a professional environment. A soft chuckle floated across the table. Harper forced herself to meet her gaze. I'm here because Evan named my daughter his heir, and because the board contacted me, not the other way around. A faint ripple of surprise moved through the directors. Damien smirked. Cute. She thinks she's one of us now. Connor ignored him. Let's begin. Ms. Lane is here because she legally represents a shareholder. She is entitled to attend this discussion. Vivian's smile thinned, but she motioned for Connor to continue. This board meeting had been staged to humiliate Harper, to expose her ignorance, overwhelm her, make her retreat. But thanks to nights studying with Julian and Connor, she understood more than they expected. Still, her palms were sweating under the table. A director cleared his throat. "Ms. Lane, given your background, can you explain your opinion on the misuse of discretionary funds within the Rowe growth portfolio?" Harper felt her stomach twist. This was a trap, a setup, a question designed to make her look incompetent. Julian shot her a discreet nod. She inhaled slowly, steady, and flipped open the binder Connor had prepared. "The issue isn't the discretionary funds," she said, voice wavering but audible. "It's the shell accounts masking debt transfers. Those weren't authorized." The director blinked, startled. Harper continued, her voice strengthening. "The inconsistencies began 18 months ago. Multiple transactions were approved by someone who didn't have the authority." She lifted her eyes. "Damian Rowe." Gasps rippled through the room. Damian's smirk vanished. "That's ridiculous." Harper slid a document forward. "This signature isn't your mother's, it's yours. We have 4 additional transfers with the exact same pattern." One director whispered, "My God." Connor added, "We also have evidence these transfers funded offshore accounts tied to Mr. Rowe." Vivienne finally spoke, sharp, icy. "This is an ambush." "No," Julian said calmly, stepping forward. "This is accountability." Vivienne shot him a murderous glare. Harper swallowed, heart pounding, but she didn't back down. For the first time, she felt the power shifting, just a little. But enough. Enough to show them she wasn't prey. Enough to make Vivienne realize something terrifying. Harper Lane wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting, and she was winning. The boardroom was still buzzing from Harper's accusation when Connor calmly closed his folder and said, "There is one more piece of evidence the board needs to see." Vivienne stiffened. Damian went pale. Harper felt her pulse hammering in her throat. Connor nodded to Julian, who stepped to the far corner and tapped a button on the wall-mounted screen. The lights dimmed automatically, the room falling into a silent, anticipatory hush. Manhattan's skyline glowed behind them like a witness. "What you're about to hear," Connor said, "was recorded by Evan Rowe 3 months before his death. It was sent to my office with explicit instructions not to play it until Harper Lane was present at a board meeting." Vivienne shot to her feet. "No, absolutely not. I forbid." "You have no authority to forbid evidence," Connor replied coldly. The screen flickered. Then Evan appeared. He was seated at his desk, looking weary but clear-eyed. A soft desk lamp lit the sharp lines of his face. His voice, when it came, was raw but steady. "If you're seeing this, I'm gone. And if Harper Lane is in the room, it means my mother is doing exactly what I predicted." Harper's breath caught. Damian cursed under his breath. Evan continued, eyes steady on the camera. "First, let me say this clearly. Lily is my daughter. I love her. I wanted to be in her life. I tried. God knows I tried. But every attempt I made was blocked by my family." Vivienne shook her head violently. "This is altered. Fake. He was emotional." But the video went on. "My mother intercepted my letters. She threatened Harper, threatened to smear her, even threatened legal action to take custody of Lily if I refused to distance myself. I signed documents under pressure, documents she planned to twist against Harper." People around the table gasped. Damian muttered, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But the video kept playing. "And Damian," Evan said, his tone hardening, "I know exactly what you were doing with the offshore accounts. I made copies of everything. If anything happens to Harper or Lily, those documents will surface." Damian's face drained of all color. Evan inhaled shakily, then spoke with heartbreaking sincerity. "Harper, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry, I should have fought harder. You never asked me for anything. You never wanted money. You just wanted honesty. And I failed you." Harper's eyes blurred with tears. She pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Evan looked directly into the camera one last time. "Give her everything I intended. Protect her. Protect our daughter. And if my family chooses war, they choose it alone." The screen went black. Silence collapsed over the room. Then, a director whispered, "This changes everything." Another said, "We need an emergency review of Damien's conduct." Vivian sat frozen, fingers trembling violently. Damien looked like a man watching the ground open beneath him, and Harper, for the first time, felt the weight shift completely in her favor. Evan had spoken, and the truth had finally entered the room. The room stayed silent long after the video ended. It was the kind of silence that didn't simply linger. It suffocated. Directors stared at one another with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and dawning horror. The skyline behind them glowed like molten gold, but inside the boardroom, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Vivian was the first to move. Not with control, not with grace. Her hands trembled as she reached for her glass of water. It rattled against the table. She pulled it back sharply, trying to regain the poise she'd spent decades perfecting. "This," she said, voice brittle, "is manipulation. Evan was sick. He was grieving. He didn't know what he was saying." But her argument was already dead. Everyone had seen the clarity in Evan's eyes. Damien slammed his palm onto the table. "This is entrapment. Harper and Connor staged this. They edited the video." Julian cut in, voice steady and sharp. "That recording was stored on an encrypted server under Evan's private account. I verified the metadata myself. Nothing was altered." Damien's mouth opened, but no words came out. A director leaned forward. "Mrs. Rowe, did you intercept Evan's letters? Did you interfere with his attempts to reach Ms. Lane?" Another director added, "Were you aware of your son's accusations regarding unauthorized transfers?" Vivian's jaw clenched. "I don't answer to you." "Oh, I think you do," the CFO replied. "This directly involves the integrity of Rowe Capital." Connor organized his papers calmly, too calmly for Vivian's liking. "We also have the copies Evan mentioned," he said. "Emails, screenshots, audio recordings of verbal threats, documents showing forged signatures. The board will receive everything." The directors exchanged glances. A storm was forming, a legal, financial, and reputational hurricane. Damien grew desperate. "This can ruin us. We need to control the narrative." One director scoffed. "Control? Damien, you embezzled funds. You forged authorizations. You put this company at risk." Another said, "This board will not protect criminal behavior." Damien's face drained. "You can't do this." But they already were. Connor closed the folder with a soft click, a sound that felt like a verdict. Vivian drew a slow breath, trying to steady herself. "This meeting is over." "No," said the chairman, rising. "It is not. We are calling an emergency ethics review, and effective immediately. Both you and Damien will be suspended from all operational roles pending investigation." It was the first time Vivian Rowe had ever looked small. Her eyes flicked to Harper, full of fury, hatred, disbelief. "This is your doing," she whispered. Harper held her gaze, hands trembling but spirit unbroken. "No, this is Evan's truth. You buried it. It finally clawed its way back." Vivian's lip curled. Damien looked like he might be sick. Julian leaned toward Harper slightly, voice soft enough for only her to hear. "This is the beginning, not the end." And Harper felt it too, the shift in the air, the power tilting toward her, the legacy of a man who loved her finally reshaping the world he left behind. Rowe Capital wasn't collapsing because of her. It was collapsing because of them. and the truth they tried to kill was now the weapon tearing their empire apart. The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and cold air, sterile, unforgiving, the kind of place where truth didn't always win, but lies had a much harder time surviving. Harper sat at the plaintiff's table, palms pressed together so tightly her knuckles were white. Connor sat beside her, calm and composed. Julian was behind them, a reassuring presence she could feel even without turning around. Across the room sat Vivian and Damian Rowe. Damian's arrogance had evaporated. He looked brittle, cornered, sweat beading at his hairline. Vivian, however, held on to her composure like a weapon, chin high, eyes sharp, posture unshaken, but Harper saw it, the faint tremor in her jaw. The cracks were spreading. The judge entered. "Court is now in session." They all rose. Harper's heart pounded, each beat echoing in her throat. Today wasn't just about the will, or the inheritance, or the board. Today determined whether Lily stayed with her or was taken by the most powerful, dangerous woman Harper had ever known. The opposing attorney stood, sleek suit, perfect diction, a voice smooth enough to coat venom in sugar. "Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that Ms. Lane is unfit to care for a child. Financial instability, emotional volatility, and potential involvement in misleading claims regarding the late Mr. Rowe," Connor cut in, rising slowly. "Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate fraud, coercion, and a deliberate campaign to destroy Ms. Lane's credibility so the Rowe family could seize custody of her daughter and undermine the legal heir's rights." A ripple moved across the room. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Vivian's attorney began the attack. Photos of Harper's small apartment, pay stubs that showed her meager income, medical bills, the welfare check report, anything to paint Harper as unstable. Harper felt each blow like a physical strike. Then Connor stood. "Your Honor, we will now present Exhibit A." Lights dimmed slightly as a screen descended. Harper's breath caught. It was the video. Evan appeared again, clear, unwavering, heartbreaking. He spoke of Lily, of Harper, of the threats, of Damian's fraud, of Vivian's manipulation. The courtroom changed as the video played. Jurors leaned forward. The judge's eyebrows lifted. The opposing attorney's confidence cracked. Vivian, for the first time, broke eye contact with the screen. When the video ended, silence filled the room like a held breath. Connor continued, voice firm. "Exhibit B, the forged signatures on transfer documents. Exhibit C, intercepted communications. Exhibit D, confirmation of offshore accounts controlled by Damian Rowe." Gasps spread like wildfire. The judge turned toward Vivian. "Mrs. Rowe, do you wish to respond?" Vivian stood, eyes burning with pride and fury. "This woman," she said, pointing at Harper, "has torn my family apart. I did what any mother would do, protect her sons." Connor stepped forward. "Protect them, or control them." Vivian's mouth tightened. The judge exhaled slowly. "I have heard enough." Harper held her breath. Her entire world rested on the next seconds. "Ms. Lane," the judge said, "the court rules in your favor. Custody remains solely with you. The will is upheld. The Rowe family's challenges are denied." Harper's vision blurred. Lily was safe. Vivian sank into her chair. Damian covered his face with his hands. Julian's hand settled gently on Harper's shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. "No," Harper realized. "We did it." For the first time in years, Harper woke without fear clawing at her chest. No notifications from tabloids, no legal threats, no unexpected knocks that stole her breath. Instead, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of her apartment, warm and gentle, the kind of morning she used to dream about when life felt like a constant storm. Lily was at the table, swinging her legs while eating cereal out of a new bowl Harper bought from Target the night before. Something small, inexpensive, but to Harper, it felt like a symbol of stability, of safety. "Mommy," Lily said with a grin, "can we go to the park later?" Harper smiled. "Yes, we can." Her voice didn't shake. Not anymore. Connor had already emailed her the formal documentation. Full custody, unchallenged, control of Lily's inheritance, legal protections for both of them. He even arranged for a financial advisor, someone who specialized in assisting people who suddenly found themselves with resources they never imagined having. But it wasn't the money that changed Harper. It was finally being seen, finally being believed, finally being free. Later that afternoon, Harper and Lily stood outside a modest two-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood, a short walk from Lily's school. The building wasn't luxurious, but the hallways were clean, the neighbors friendly, the air warm. Harper signed the lease with steady hands. "You're moving?" the landlord asked kindly. Harper nodded. "We're starting fresh." Lily ran from room to room, squealing, "Mommy, this one has a window. And look, my bed can go right there." Harper pressed a hand over her heart, overwhelmed by the simple joy on her daughter's face. This was worth every humiliation, every sleepless night, every fight she never wanted, but was forced to endure. That evening, as Harper unpacked a small box labeled "Fragile," there was a knock on the door. Her breath caught. Old habits die hard. But when she opened it, she found Julian Hayes standing in the hallway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "For the record," he said softly, "I've never been more proud of someone in my life." Harper flushed. "You didn't have to come." "I wanted to," Julian replied. "Besides, Evan would have wanted me to check in, and I wanted to see how you were settling." He glanced around the apartment, smiling at the simple furniture, Lily's drawings taped to the fridge, the warmth already filling the space. "It suits you," he said. "It feels like hope." Harper laughed softly. "We're not used to hope, but we're learning." Julian stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If you ever want help, professionally or personally, you only have to ask." There was no pressure in his tone, just sincerity. For the first time in a long, long while, Harper allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't built on fear. A future with choices. A future with someone who respected her, not someone who tried to erase her. Slowly, she smiled. "Maybe," she said. "I'll let you buy me dinner sometime." Julian's answering smile was warm enough to melt winter, and as Lily came running to show him her new room, Harper felt something she once believed she'd lost forever, the beginning of a life she deserved. Central Park glimmered beneath the soft glow of a late spring afternoon. Children chased each other across the grass. Dogs barked happily along winding paths, and the distant Manhattan skyline shimmered like a reminder of everything Harper had survived. She sat on a sun-warmed bench, Lily curled beside her, drawing tiny butterflies in a notebook. For the first time in years, Harper felt calm. Not the fragile kind that shatters with the next crisis, but real peace. Julian approached slowly, hands in his pockets, suit jacket open, tie loosened as if he'd finally allowed himself to exhale too. He wasn't the intimidating CEO from headlines, nor the polished strategist from boardrooms. Around Harper, he was simply Julian, steady, warm, and increasingly important in her world. "Big day tomorrow," he said as he sat beside her. Harper nodded. "Their sentencing hearing." Vivian and Damien's fall had been spectacular. The board removed them permanently. Federal charges were filed: fraud, coercion, evidence tampering. Damien faced prison time. Vivian's empire crumbled into dust and headlines. Her legacy fell not because Harper fought dirty, but because truth finally outshouted money. Harper hadn't needed revenge. Life delivered it for her. "You know," Julian said softly, "you handled all of this with more grace than anyone I've ever met." Harper laughed under her breath. "Grace? Julian, I cried in my bathroom more times than I can count." "Crying isn't weakness," he said. "Surviving is strength. And winning?" He smiled. "That's power." Lily looked up then, waving her notebook. "Julian, look, I drew our family." Julian blinked. "Our family?" Harper felt heat rise in her cheeks, but Lily continued proudly, pointing at each stick figure. "That's Mommy, that's me, and that's you." Julian's breath caught, just a fraction, but enough for Harper to notice. He looked at her carefully, as if waiting for her to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she shifted closer, nudging his shoulder lightly. "She draws the world the way she wants it to be," Harper murmured. Julian's voice dropped. "How do you want it to be, Harper?" The question hit deeper than she expected. For years, her world had been about survival, protecting Lily, enduring storms. She hadn't allowed herself to dream beyond safety. But now she could choose. She looked at Julian, this man who stood beside her in courtrooms and kitchens, who believed in her before she believed in herself. "I want—" Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "I want a life where Lily grows up surrounded by people who truly love her. And a life where I'm not alone in the fight anymore." Julian's eyes softened. "Then let me be part of that life. Not to replace anyone. Not to fill a space. But to build something new. With you." Harper didn't answer with words. She reached for his hand. He intertwined his fingers with hers, steady and sure. Across the park, Lily's laughter rose like a promise. Harper exhaled, a long, healing breath, and felt the weight of her old life finally slip away. She had fought the impossible.